All right, hello everybody. This is Matthew Crooks and Sean Kendrot here to start a second video in our series of Feeder Manager 2 demos. We're going to focus on symbology today. We're going to show you how much easier it is to symbolize in Feeder Manager 2.0. We're going to run through a quick demo here as we've done with the previous video, and then we're going to do a recap at the end. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean Kendrot.
All right, thanks, Matt. So what we're seeing here is ArcMap, and we're seeing a bunch of test cases that the Feeder Manager team has come up with in order to make sure that Feeder Manager is working properly. So we are rewriting everything from scratch within Feeder Manager 2, but we want to make sure that everything that we used to do properly, we're still doing properly again. So some small test cases. We don't need big networks to just get all these corner cases taken care of, but we see a lot of mesh networks in here now. We see multi-fed situations, loop situations here, and really making sure we get all the information set up properly. So what I want to show you now is symbology. How do we symbolize with Feeder Manager 1 as it sits today? Well, let's take a look at how I can symbolize on energized phases. I'm going to click on this group layer here to turn that on, and we can see I've got some pretty nice coloring here, but really what I have is a lot of gray. I'm going to zoom in and let's take a look at what's going on here. So I see this happening here. I see a lot of gray. I see a lot of other colors, but let's take a look at what the symbology actually is. I'm symbolizing off of the feeder information field within Feeder Manager 1, and I'm saying that the values of 0 through 7 should be symbolized as such. So anything that's 3 phases should be symbolized red. Anything that's not fed at all, or that's not energized, should be green. Now those should probably be changed around, and they should probably be switched. But I quickly added this in through the color ramp, so I'm going to blame the color ramp in ArcMap for that symbology. But really, let's talk about what this means. Why is everything gray, or why is most things gray here? And the reasoning is because we're labeling off the feeder information field. Now this field, we try to jam as much information as we possibly can in there. It's an integer field, but really we treat it as if we're doing a bitwise operations on it, and we store energized phases in there, we store loop information, we store whether it's multi-fed, and so this, when we do bitwise stuff on this, we say, okay, well, the values 0 through 7 are an indication of either not energized or energized on all the phases. So I can get that working fine as long as nothing is multi-fed, like up here and down here, or as long as nothing is looped. So, and here we see loops happening here. We see in this area, we see a multi-feed here, so that's why it's gray. So in order to get all these values working properly, I actually have to say, okay, not only do I need the values for 0 through 7, but I need to have the loop bit plus 0 through 7 in there to symbolize everything that's looped. Well, if I have multi-feed situations, I need to have the multi-feed bit plus 0 through 7 to symbolize every multi-feed source. And if I have loops and it's multi-fed, then I've got to account for both of those as well. So we see this this list just getting longer and longer and longer the more and more information we track. So it really becomes difficult to symbolize on energized phases. It almost becomes impossible. So what about labeling? So I can label on energized phases, and I can actually get all these values labeling 100% accurately, but let's look at how complex that is to label. So I'm going to look at this labeling. I see that I have an expression set up here, so let's take a look at this expression. Once again, I'm labeling off of or using the feeder info field, but this time I'm doing more bitwise operations, but this time using a VB function. And I'm appending, if the first bit is set, I set A. If the second bit is set, I append B. If the third bit is set, I append C. So that way I'm able to get all these labels properly labeling the way that they're supposed to, A, B, C, based off of feeder information and what values are set there. But as you can see, you almost need a developer on staff just to even get energized phases labeling properly. So it becomes very, very difficult if you want to do any labeling within Feeder Manager. And so one more example of symbolizing within Feeder Manager 1 is I'm going to symbolize which features are looped. So I shouldn't have any features looped, in a normal data condition. You don't want features looped, or maybe you do, but it kind of depends. So I'm going to see what this takes to do this. This is a definition query, and this definition query is set up on the feeder information field. And, well, we're doing a lot of different math here, but this value 64 is the key one here, and that's because 64 is the value of a loop. So if the 64 value is set, then that means that it's loop, but we also have to do a bunch of other math here to allow ArcGIS to understand this definition query. It becomes very complex. And if you want to start symbolizing on tie devices, and you need to put a tie device bit in there, so it really becomes difficult to do definition queries and really filter those ones out within Feeder Manager today. Let's take a look at what it takes to do this in Feeder Manager 2. Same database, exact same database, obviously the same test cases if it's the same database. So let's take a look at symbolizing energized phases. So what we have now is we can see nice coloring. No longer is it, we don't see this big gray anymore. And let's take a look at what the symbology actually is. Now I'm energizing on the symbolizing on the energized phases field, not the feeder information field. And we see values coming in here, A, ABC, B, AB. All these values are now actually in there. We actually see these values come in, and we can also read them off. And I can symbolize on those so much easier. I don't need to worry about loops anymore. But as easy it is to symbolize, it's the same way to label on that. So let me zoom in a little bit so you can see the labeling. So we saw that the symbolizing was on energized phases. Well, guess what? Labeling is exactly the same. I'm going to label off the energized phases field. And I'm able to see A, B, C all coming in through that one field. No longer do I need to do this weird complex function to append A, append B, depending on what the feeder information is. But what about loops? How do we handle all these cases where I want to symbolize on loops, or maybe you want to symbolize your tie devices? So let's take a look at what that takes. So this is again a definition query. But now my definition query is set up to say loop equals 1. Is it a loop? Is it not a loop? Very easy to say whether or not something is a loop or not. I no longer have to do this complex math to filter out what my loops are. So a quick demonstration of what you can do with Feeder Manager 2 to make it more useful to your users.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Those are some excellent demos there. That really just shows off the simplicity of Feeder Manager 2. I mean, literally anybody can pick this up now and get this running. You don't need to have a developer to go through and figure out, what these queries say and how to show symbolization on energized phases. I mean, anybody can pick this up now and say, hey, I want to symbolize based on energized phase. Boom, there it is. It's very easy to use, very simplified, and we want to continue to develop with these types of thoughts in mind. So this is the end of video 2 in our series on Feeder Manager 2. We'll come out with some additional videos in the near future, so please stay in tune with what we're doing and continue to give us your feedback. Thank you, and have a great day.